got a wealth of wisdom to share with us today, in terms of your past experiences first, and and then in terms of what has been happening in Nigeria over the last sort of 2 to 3 weeks, which directly or indirectly it affects all of us, because no matter where we are on the surface of the earth, home is home. It can't be denied.
Sure.
We're sojourning in this current location that we are, and eventually Yoruba say, after we finish sojourning all the land, we would eventually have to go back home.
More appropriately, yeah.
So to that extent, everything that happens back there, we have ties to it. If the governance is good, it benefits us. If it's not good, if there's unrest, looting, rioting, protests, bad governance, lack of normal amenities, it affects us all the way. So, and as I was saying to you earlier on, one of the things that people tend to forget is it affects the ordinary man more than the middle class or the celebrities, or that, if they need be, decide to take the mantle of this fight upon their shoulder, because the ordinary man is where the buck stops. Bad governance, no electricity, no light, no. The celebrity will buy his diesel, he will drive his Range Rover, he will tar his own road and everything, but the masses is where the buck stops. And obviously, I feel a lot of us fall into the category of the masses. So sometimes it's always good to hear the point of view of people who are, the masses, but who's risen above that little bucket of limitation that they might want to put us in, because we've been able to sojourn and we've got knowledge and we've traveled the world and we see how things are done, and we've got perspective because we're knowledgeable people and we read. So that's why I brought the wise man on. As you can see by the level of my gray hair and his gray hair, wisdom is different from wisdom. Do you understand?
No. I'm not a sage. I'm just a regular person. I talk a lot, so that's why I talk myself into most things, so, which can be a plus or a minus. Well, a few things. You see, we're citizens, and we're global. The world is global. There's also one of the things that we need to consider is that the idea of diaspora is not a recent phenomenon. Black people have been, through history, black people have been, to different parts of the world. And when we think of diaspora, look at what the Indian diaspora did for India in the last 25 years. Look at what the Israelis, did. And there's been interesting stories about other people. So I think there's a lot we could learn from that as a people as well. In further to what you just said as the intro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in terms of things, or us being in the diaspora, then our roots are still back home. Many of our cultural values are still back home.
Definitely.
We were having because I spoke to him a little bit this afternoon. We were having a conversation, and I was saying, like, no matter even how long we stay here, when we first land, fresh off the ship, we want to be like the white man. We want to be like the West Indians. We want to be like the Chinese. We want to adopt that culture, which we were so fascinated about when we initially landed. But after indulging in that culture and seeing all of it, we sort of shy back into our own first love, which is our true culture, and realize our culture is actually more valuable than this. Our country has better resources, although be it mismanaged, than what we have here. And if we're in your own land, you can't be in your father's home and be suffering. Do you understand? As they say, But again, as scripture says, a house that's disintegrated or divided within itself, it is hard for it to stand, which is where we are, and which is what has led us to where we are now. Which
it hasn't helped us, but I think it's part of the experience. The more it's part of the journey. There's many parts to it, and no one is an expert, but I think it's part of the experience. We're here because by persuasion, by choice. But yes, our roots, our names connect us back home, and yeah, we still have that that attachment. But as it regards to nation building, it assumes a different dynamic, and it requires, a different mindset. And there are lots of ideas that are being tried or have been tried over time, which makes it the experience itself. But as we learn and the yearnings become more concrete, or as people get more expressive, women are more vocal these days, unlike the days of our moms. Now it's the youth. I anticipate also to, as part of that experience, why don't the old and retired actually give a shout out? Hey, we've given our best years to this country. What do we have to show for it? How do we make sure that you guys don't repeat the same mistakes we've done? So collectively, we own that experience. That's how I see it.
So if you mentioned something there and you said the criteria for nation building is different. So what is it that we've been getting wrong in, because, okay, so we've had independence 60 years. Nigeria has, the formation of Nigeria, I think was it 1957 or so, the first, or 1914 actually, where, and then 1957.
Yeah. Have you seen another thing that you need to, sorry to interrupt you, but another thing that occurred to me, that it's worth sharing and letting people know that they need to watch Chupo Shashore's documentary on
making of Nigeria. 100%.
Yeah. It gives you a bit of a background.
Yeah, that would give you a definite background, and also a journey to the colonial. I can't remember what it. A journey to the colonial. Oh, is that your phone or mine? Oh, okay.
Not mine.
Oh, that's mine. Oh, sorry. Yeah, a journey to the colonial. I can't remember what it is, but I'll pin the title. It's on Netflix. I think it's about 50 series, but it's really good.
It's worth a watch. So when you were talking about the making of Nigeria, that's a reference point.
Yeah.
So back to your question, I think you didn't really complete that question.
Yeah. So I was saying, what is it that we've been doing wrong? Because basically, going from that Shashore, when the Awolowas, the Kutis, the Tafawa Balewas came into Britain to come and literally ask our hand in independence, and then they granted us, taking away the Governor General, who used to be the Governor General of Nigeria, who was an English person, and then Tafawa Balewa and Zik came in. But an interesting point to notice, even at that point, was when Tafawa Balewa and Zik were ruling, the reason why the army came in and overthrew before the first election, as according to that documentary, was because of the flashiness, the flamboyancy of the way the leaders were living. Was it the NCP, or the one that Awolowo
had AG. There was Northern People's Congress, NPC, and there was NCNC.
Yeah, NCNC. And
then just for the benefit of the doubt, I'm not a politician. I've just been curious about things happening in Nigeria, so I talk about these things as far as I know. Not because we're not talking politics, we're just talking about the experience. So carry on.
So it's funny you said that, because I was going to ask you somewhere along the line that before you begin to answer anything, whether you have any political affiliations or what your political biases are, because in that case you now be answering questions like Desmond Elliott, which is what
No. That's why I can feel free to express myself based on what I understand,
Yeah,
because there's, people who understand these things in different ways, and there are other perspectives as well,
100%.
and nobody knows it all.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
but the world is interesting in such a way that everybody has a story or a view to share. So mine is just one of them.
So
Yeah.
going back to that question quickly is, if we've had all those set of leaders, we had Zik, we had Tafa Balewa, we have Irossi, then we had Mohammed come in and overthrow him, then Yakubu came in, then Mohammed, then what was it, Obasanjo, then Shagari, the whole lot, down the line in terms, and each one of them were a clique of the elite in their own, at that level. There was no, even though they were overthrowing themselves, apart from Nwosu, Major General Nwosu, who went to kill off Tafa Balewa. Yeah,
Ironzi.
Yeah, but it was Nziogu in the north that actually shot
killed. Yeah,
Yeah,
the first coup.
yeah,
The first coup, and then there was the
Yeah.
second coup.
So apart from that, there wasn't really any killings, but they were just moving themselves off the positions of power so that another clique could come in. And that is literally what has happened up until now. So those set of military elite turned political elites are still the people who are trickling down into what we currently have now. So we spoke about disconnection earlier on today. Is it that they've passed their sell-by dates and they're now disconnected with the rest of the masses of Nigeria, or is it that they still have, as we said, or in a way we're elders, they have wisdom in leadership to pass down to the masses of Nigeria?
Because when you started, we asked the question. Yeah, two questions. Yeah, I was about to say so. Okay, I think because I referred to Shukbo's documentary, it shows a timeline of things that happened before we got independence and how we were bundled together as a people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was based on certain thinking at that time. While it was done then and we still remain, so I don't have a problem with that. What I think was the naughty point of that that aspect of our history was the fact that we had no say about what was going on, and those who pretended to represent us, their mindset, their approach was liberation, freedom, and it was just a vague term. In concrete sense, it had no meaning. At some time, it did have meaning, but when they were aspiring for it, it wasn't really clear. So by the time they got this power, Northern People's Congress, the Northerners had an agenda. Actually, Saldana, from what I gathered, didn't go to Eton or go to Cambridge to study law like Awolowo and Azikwe, but had a sense of mission and history very strong, attached to the Usman Madam Fodio approach. Those are the things that happened before the British showed up anyway. So now, by the time we were bundled together, it was more or less like rivalry. And, each component unit, I don't want to talk tribals here, just about tribal unit, was scheming for ambition. There was a time that Awolowo did some things in the Western region that are still there. The same thing, Saldana, and in a much, much greater sense, Azikiwe in the East. At least University of Nigeria is there, evident, amongst other things. But I think also that rivalry was healthy, but there was a toxic part of it that we were working against each other rather than coming together.
Could you explain that? What do you mean by that?
Because
the reason I asked was during at the independence, the whole tribes, the whole the whole different ethnic tribes, which were the three major ones, plus the supposed created ones, Hausa Fulani, which is obviously in that documentary as well, they all celebrated independence. So
we all celebrated independence.
Was it the question was,
yeah.
The question was it the leaders that were working against each other, or
they were right? There was rivalry amongst them before they agreed. At the Lancaster conference in London, they came for the three of them, including with Balewa and some others, and a lot of ites came to London a few times to iron it out. Initially, in the West, we wanted independence far earlier than the North,
100%.
but at least generally in the South.
Yes.
The North said wait, but the North had strong ties to the British. And even when we got that independence, there was rivalry amongst the major three, right?
Yes.
One thing we fail to ignore is that the North had a stronger ties to places like Sudan and Saudi Arabia, just as equally strong to the ones they have with the British.
Mm.
So there's this narrative that, the British ganged up and gave it to the Northerners. But what I've seen found out that explains that is the fact that the British and the Arabs have always been lifelong allies. By proxy, the next move to the Arabs, because the Arabs came to Africa long before the British came anyway. Mm-hmm. So they know us.
They traded with us.
So, yes. So by proxy, I would have thought that the Arabs would have influenced the British to hand over to their allies in our part of Africa. Because historically, I'm going back now just for a second, what you call Nigeria today and Ghana, Upper Volta was known as Western Sudan.
Yeah.
The maps are there.
Yeah. Before the 1855 Berlin Conference, I think that was.
Yeah. It was known as Western Sudan. Now, the similarities with their cousins in Sudan and those Fulani guys and the cattle herders is very clear. They all herd cattle. They are migrant people. They are nomadic people. So these guys, they had a strong allegiance to Sudan, to Saudi via Sudan. And essentially, Britain created Sudan anyway. If you look at the history of Africa, all this happened before Nigeria was created. So by the time Nigeria was created, for administrative ease and everything, and they didn't want to disrupt the Islam setup in the north, probably they felt, they could trust these guys. So they advised them, according to the story, that look, man, never lose this power. This is your competitive advantage. So with that mindset, Sardauna proceeded and put everybody's Northern First agenda. Awolowo was doing his own free education, Western region, WNTV, health services, all that kind of thing, Cocoa House, name it, Liberty Stadium, healthy dynamic. But everybody was trying to prove a point amongst all of them that they could not concede anything. What I would have thought that rivalry could have been shelved a bit or balanced off, and then actually sat down and say, how do we work together? Because that division remained till today or in its fragment. Mm. And if the second part is, okay, where did it go wrong? These people who cornered power then, the key parts of power, they have a history of using power. The Fulani, they basically, no disrespect, as far as I know, there's no Hausa people anymore. Mm. They're more or less, the Hausa language exists, but it's part of what the Arabs did to the Hausa people and what Islam did to us. The Hausa people are close to us, Yoruba. Yeah, I've gone back in time now. But
they never liked the Easterners anyway. they figured the Easterners were too ambitious for them.
The Easterners too have their own dynamic. You see, ironically, when I found out myself that the Yorubas and the Igbos are cousins, I know that there's a close relationship between
the affiliation with the Benin Kingdom.
Not necessarily, but partly yes. You see, if you look at Africa, there are things they didn't teach us in school. There are things they didn't teach us in school that I found out myself, and I have a few people that are interested similarly. all these things about Western Sudan, about everything, you know, it's there.
Yeah.
But they never told.
You have to do extra reading for that.
Well, yeah, if you're curious enough,
Yeah.
yeah. So, okay, they've created Nigeria, they've left us. How can we get it right? Our concentration within, you know, the concentration of people called Nigeria today, as it is, we have a country that we're doubting ourselves. Why? But our exploits are confirmed globally, performance-wise, everything. How can we get it right back home? We need to shelve the old rivalries. We really need to understand if it means going back and it's just not being curious. The fact that the Igbos and Yorubas are cousins because we come from the Bantu tribe. There's something they call the Great Bantu Migration that populated all the coastal areas and the tropical forest, the thick jungles. You understand? There was a migration of people who came from the Middle East who were black. Before the British appeared, the Portuguese have been around. They dealt with the Benin people. And even before that time, the Portuguese too have dropped people because there was a time Portugal was black and it was changed to be white, and to relocate the black they dropped them in parts of Nigeria that currently exist today. There's a place called Escravos. Escravos is not a Nigerian name; it's a Portuguese
Yeah.
name. Lagos is not a
Yes,
Portuguese.
it's a Portuguese name. Yeah, 100%.
Exactly. So,
because
talking about
just at that point, you know, it's been said that the very first set of slaves that left the shores of Africa came from Nigeria, and they took 8 of them to Portugal as a gift. I'm sure you would have read up on that story before. As a gift to the Portugal.
Yeah,
then
the Portuguese were slave traders too.
Yeah.
You see, one of the problems we have in Nigeria is that we don't understand history as black people. You know, that's what I've been trying to break down, and you know, time will really permit me. I can only talk in different diverging areas, dimensions. But so now that we've got Nigeria, we have diverse histories. We have people whose cousins were slaves that were captured when slavery was outlawed in this country, and then they were captured, and then they were taken to Sierra Leone. That's how Sierra Leone was created. Then you had people like the Ajayi Crowders, the Macaulays, the Samuel Johnsons. They come from families who wanted to reestablish their roots back to Oyo or the major towns around, and they came back. You have those. You have the people who have been there all through the time. You have people whose history, like the Yorubas now, they say we were chased away from Middle East, in former Persia. That's where we're from, Yorubas. If the story of Oduduwa from the East or Arabia is true, that narrative comes from there. But obviously, there were Yoruba people in Idore or War. Do you understand? On the coastal areas. The Benin, they're part of the Bantu migration, just like us. They met the Ijos on the coastal area. The Ijos are riverine people. They're not hinterland people, so they didn't create territory. So they left everything for the Benin people. That's why you see the Benin people have at the basis of at the root of the Benin names is always an Ijo derivative. So the diversity is so much. You have, when you go to further east along the coastal areas, you have the Efik, you have the Ibibio, you have the Efik the Efiks have a language called Insibidi.
Yeah.
In their own form of writing. You know, anybody that said we're illiterate is lying to you. So knowing all this now, I just knew this, just gathered all this in the last couple of years, but it wasn't taught in school. Knowing all this and how Nigeria works, where we got it wrong is that we're still looking like it's us against the others. Oh, now Awusa. Oh, Fulani cattle headsman. That's one of the recent issues that we've been talking about. Have you ever bothered to look at it that this problem is actually ecological? The distance is encroaching. They're running out of arable land for pastures for their animals, their cattle. So they're encroaching further. So where Nigeria probably can work. Where we're getting it wrong is because we're distancing from ourselves based on identities. And who defined all these identities? The British. And we too, we think that more we identify ourselves, but we are fragmenting. And the more fragmented we are, the more difficult it is to operate as a unit.
Okay. So if on that point there, or on that note, knowing that the British acquired the entity Nigeria as, you know, just acquired it from the Niger Company also, you know.
The Niger,
from the Niger Company. Knowing even at that time, I think 1914, they paid about 800 and something thousand for the entity called Nigeria. And then obviously they started, you know, coming in, killing off the people from the Benin Kingdom, you know, killing off everybody who was just trying to gather land, especially after the 1845 Berlin Convention, where they had sort of mapped out Nigeria that, okay, you guys, British, this is the area that, you know, you could tread on. Don't trespass into Cameroon, don't go. All a bit of history. Would you say, in your own opinion, and I like to say it that way, that the British knew, for the amount of different ethnic groups that they brought together, like tied a rope around, they say Nigeria consists of about 250 different ethnic groups.
350.
Well, yeah, well, see, and then speaking at minimum 250 different dialects.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this to say that when the Tower of Babel was being built, there was one thing that was synonymous amongst the people of the world that was building it at that time, as the scripture says, was that they all had one voice and spoke one language. And the Creator looked down from heaven and said, oh, these people, look how far they built this tower up until now, because they all speak in one voice and one language. That if they speak in one voice and in one language, they would have the chances of building this tower to heaven. Let me come down from my high horse and scatter their language. That's all he did. And that was the end of that. All he did was give them different languages. And that was the end of the Tower of Babel. But that's where the narrative or the storyline ends. So bearing that in mind, how could the British, this is what I'm saying, would the British have known that there is no way you could put 350 ethnic groups speaking minimum 250 different languages together as a nation, and because you're frustrating our project because we paid for you as a land and as a people so that we could siphon your resources, we could be your colonial masters and siphon your resources till we're satisfied. And so if we say 1914 they made that payment, and then 1960, which is basically about 34 or 40 years after, you're asking for independence. Would I give you that independence that is just independence on a slippery slope, knowing for sure there's no way with this thing that I'm tying around you, that, you know, again, I'll go back to that phrase, a house divided amongst itself would never be able to stand. That you would never stand. It just depends on how long it would take you to disintegrate. Do you think, in your own opinion, that was the move that the British made, as in a chess game? And if that is the case, second question, would you think human nature being where we are, 4 industrial or 3 industrial revolutions passed through all that time, can we ever still gel ourselves together to become one? Could there be unity in our diversity? Put it that way.
First of all, I'd like to highlight one thing. We need to understand a bit of the details about how these things work. In a simplistic sense, Nigeria was created based on treaties. There was a time the British came to Lagos and Dosumo had to cede the title to them. Then they claimed territory, they conquered the they moved into land, and they were moving about because they were the king of they were the owners of the sea at that time. They had the best ships, British. So as they were operating in Lagos, simultaneously they were in Brass, they were in Warri, they were in Port Harcourt and Calabar, because those are the ports of commerce. When they signed treaties in all these areas to be able to move interland. And they needed the authority of the Queen to seal these things. So the Queen did it for them. And they had to repatriate, get resources, pay the Queen, pay the royalties, pay the banks. Everybody was laughing. They made money. That was the game then. As time went by, they couldn't sustain it. And they are outsiders. And then we came to the stage where we wanted to have independence. Now, by virtue of those treaties were mutual agreements that were all fused in that amalgamation that happened in 1914. They were all blended together to create the entity Nigeria. As of the time we were, as I understand, at the time we were aspiring for independence, they knew that they just want to remove their own infrastructure of administering Nigeria.
Okay.
But they knew that the pipes and drains, when I say the pipes and drains, just like a typical house, there's a pipe that brings in water, there's a pipe that takes out the waste. You know, the basics of running the country, the range of power is still theirs.
Yeah.
You're going to still trade with them. They're still going to integrate with their banking system or depend on them for banking. Those are key areas. So they didn't really do it. I don't think they did it with, you know, they were confounded. You see, how I say that, if you need to understand this, is when the British came to, when Nigeria was created, it's no coincidence that Nigeria is landlocked by French countries, because West Africa was run over by France. The rivalry in Europe spilled over to Africa because the French had a head start. So it was by chance, and because they had discovered oil a long time ago, and they knew, Britain knew other parts known as Nigeria, that by hook or crook, they made sure they create Nigeria, just as they created Ghana, Uganda, and Kenya, at least. So that's how they balanced their interests. Now, what really happened in all these countries that the British left, we all have the same similar problems. Why? Because my personal opinion, we look up to them. We try to replicate what they've done, but it's not meant for our people. It keeps on driving a wedge. Parliamentary system. Okay, look at Awolowo, for example. By the time Awolowo was dominant in the Western region, he reduced the influence of the Alaafin of Oyo so that he could capture, because before that time, the governance was from the Alaafin's authority and the local government authorities under the regional kings, or people like who have influence and dominance on. Awolowo removed it. You understand? He made those people irrelevant, and then they now came with Egbe Omo Oduduwa, AG. We'll do this for you, and then they bamboozled their way. In the north, Sardauna didn't do that.
Okay.
I don't know what the story is, to be honest, in terms of facts in the east. But I know that the Obi of Onitsha, the Oba of Benin, nobody tampers with those people. Nobody jokes around with them. So, yeah. So where when they left, it wasn't because they paid money. They continuously were making, and they still make money till today. It's the fact that, okay, it's left in your hands. We can't really pull you by hamstrings anymore. And then we were trying to copy everything that is foreign and try to replicate it in Nigeria. We were in the First Republic. It was parliamentary system that we adopted. Yeah, it failed. Now the second attempt, now we're like presidential. We've tried that in the Second Republic and up to date. This presidential system, but the wedge between the rulers and the ruled is still there, and the parties the platforms upon which we are seeking this political power are artificially created. They're not geared towards genuine nationhood. When the Tories are campaigning here, you don't see any sign of dominant British, whereas the Tory Welsh, or there might be more Welsh people who are Labour because of Hughes and all that kind of thing. But you don't see persona. Everybody's. You see, in our part of the world, we have huge egos. So when Awolowo came, I'm your savior. When Sadana came in the other side, he told them he's their savior. Zik said the same time, and then they were all competing, and then they got tired, and then the military came in. When the military came in, Izegu, Kaduna Izegu, Major General Kaduna Izegu, he was ambitious. He believed in merit. But the dominance of the North via the military, via the federal civil service was something he could not tolerate. He rebelled. He killed so many people, northern elites, including the Saldana. Saldana was a god. We don't know the extent, but he was mourned. And then Ironsi was there because, the counter coup, some of them died or whatever. So Ironsi was a compromise candidate.
Yeah.
But the dominance of the Southerners in the army to the disadvantage of the Northerners was a source of bad blood to them. They too, they planned another coup, wiped out them in Ironsi. They came in. And then they were there, they held power, and Gowon was there for a while, till a series of other coups as well. Now, in that time, the military had realized, our army was the same army that they used to legitimize the Royal Niger Company.
Right.
I hope you know.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that, but yeah, go ahead.
That's where the history of our army comes from. The earliest security guards at the Royal Niger Company
is what they transformed.
Yeah, that's what birthed an army. And it's always been about, there's an interesting book that I read about the army. Basically, the army they use force and get what they want. It's that simple language. They have the artillery, they're trained, so they can subdue anybody, internal or external. So being aware that they had that strength and that dominance in the army, they held on to it. And over the years right now, I hate to say this, we in the South are disenfranchised. So much so that's why we're crying wolf. And that's feeding a lot of sentiment. But when you look at it from the history perspective, we were not educating ourselves. The intricacies, the dynamics of Nigeria means that we should think strategically, not prepared to go out on war, not to upset any other tribe or sorry, I got a call coming, but I will end it. Okay, stop. Yeah. Not because we want to, champion the tribal flag or anything, but because we want to make it work. That's what's been missing, in my own opinion.
Would you? I want to pull you on that comment you made, that in the South we're disenfranchised because, and the reason being because we're not educating ourselves on the dynamics of the government or the dynamics of how we could attain power. The Northerners, they're not that much educated. In fact, they're the least. They've got the higher percentage of illiterates in Nigeria.
You're making a mistake here, and I think we might have to revisit, even myself, to prove that. The North have an army of well-educated, well-positioned people everywhere.
Well-positioned, but well-educated. Yeah. I think they're leveraging on the framework of that colonial handover that you've spoken about since
the advantage
by way of geographical area and just the mindset created in them that, as you clearly said, do not lose this hold of governance that we're giving you. And they've been able to clearly use that to reign and re-reign and re-champion the course of power.
Okay, when in the South, what I meant by being disenfranchised, I mean that, you see, when in the times of our parents, my granddad, my maternal grandfather went to war, the Second World War, was in Burma. He had his laurels. I saw it, It's a pity I'm far away from home now. I don't know what happened to his stuff, but he came back with so much exploits. At that time, before independence, a lot of us, our families were drafted into the army. But there was something that happened to us in the West. By the time our law made education free, we began to look down on people who were recruited into the army as thugs.
Okay.
You know, why don't you go be a doctor or an accountant? Be somebody respectable, a manager or a teacher, and that kind of thing. Which the choice was not wrong. But I think from what I know now, having been here for a number of years, I see young kids who joined the army. Even some of my colleagues I've worked with, they joined the army, got into the radiography department, signals, picked up IT, and they're working. In fact, they're the ones that get the quickest. When we get jobs, they get the quickest contract because they're easily cleared security-wise. You understand? The army, when you speak to them, they tell you that the army trained them. Oh, they went there. Why is our army not training our young ones? Why is it that the army is just to stockpile arms to fight another section of the country or to intimidate everybody? We have the people, but we're not thinking like that. Both the people who hold the reins of power, both of us. And then also too, over the years, a lot of us in the South have been retired out of the army.
Yeah.
The top head hunters in the military now are from other parts of the country, and they're running the shots. What happened to us? Why did we see this to them? How did we see this? So much so that we're crying wolf. Meanwhile, just as I was saying to you earlier this afternoon, there are people who just went to school. They went to go and read public administration and civil studies. They go and do strategic studies and planning and government agency. They don't even have a degree, but they're career civil servants, and they occupy life-changing positions. They are the ones documenting the government policy, turning it, twisting it in whichever direction they ought to see it. So we have lots of doctors, lawyers, but a lot of us are emigres. We contribute to the diaspora people. We're not contributing to the effort back home. Where our remittances count for such. But if the cycle repeats itself, we keep on producing people who are out of the picture. Well, whereas these guys will just go and do public administration and civil studies, and then in the state civil service, they get to federal positions, PAMSEC, and that's it. Now, there are high achievers amongst these northerners too, and they're performers. They're people who believe in excellence, and they excel. So the narrative is not that they corner the power for themselves. I think it means more of, setting the boundaries or space for healthy competition amongst us. But we still recognize that we're one unit. The British didn't leave us by any game. We are the ones, I think, shooting ourselves in the foot. We don't have a history of building a nation on multilingual parts. Some people speak this way. Yoruba nation existed. Maybe the Igbo nation too existed, or somehow. Then other people, some other ethnic tribes existed. But bringing it all together, that is where we've missed it. Because we still want to do, oh, he's a Yoruba man, oh, he's a Bini man, no, he's an Igbo man. Oh, what about us? We're Ikwere, we're not Igbo, we're not Igbo, we're not Yoruba, we're not Efik. You understand? And then
But that bringing it all together, it's not the masses' fault now. That boils down strictly to leadership and the string of leaders that we've had who have adopted that divide and rule strategy for all the tenure. Because so prime example, Buhari as it is now, the three arms of government, has northerners in there. There's no equal sharing of power along cultural lines. So for Yoruba to have this, or for Yoruba to be Minister of Justice, or this one to be head Speaker of the House, or everything is so that division along cultural lines is still.
It's another fault line, another disconnect. The way I could easily explain that is that the gaps have been all laid down. Okay, I was listening to Professor Bolaji Akiyemi yesterday. He said that there's a report, Justice Uwe's report, on, I think, some that involves some kind of reform. And the 2014 Constitutional Review Conference.
Yeah.
Those two documents have loads of recommendations, I believe, along the lines of the things we talk about. But they don't get implemented. They've been overlooked. And before that, I would have gone back to the 1979 Constitution or the 1999 Constitution. That was my reference point. But the key thing is that, you see, the people that go into these into these constitutional assemblies, the ones that bash the Constitution at each time, they go there on ethnic lines. They go there to seek to build power blocks. They don't go there with the ideal that, oh, let's build a nation. There's also something missing in the sense that the people that aspire for these positions of leadership, he could have been a good doctor, he could have been a good accountant, he could have been a, in the act of nation building, it requires another kind of thinking. There's lots of things about in humanities, policy studies, things I've not even read, but basically it's about deciding how you're going to get a people to work together, to collaborate, to cooperate, to coexist.
Absolutely, coexist.
And that is the height of people's intelligence. You understand? And that's how you can optimize resources. At the moment, it's unfortunate that Buhari belongs to the old guard, which is territorial minded, and obviously with all the recent things that happened in the last few weeks. But I still feel that where we are now, especially with the NSAS movement and what these kids have done, we should make certain things clear. We want to exist as a unit, but we need to find a way to work together. And our approach must be like, you listen to us, we're prepared to listen to you. I think that would possibly happen in the younger generation.
Okay.
We grew up with a lot of bias.
Okay, so
and that bias is preventing us from talking like that.
Okay, so you nicely led us into where we were meant to be, go ourselves. So yeah, so this NSAS movement, we all know what it's all about. We know what SARS is, which is a special anti-robbery squad of the police.
Yeah.
And we know what NSAS is, which is obviously a hashtag that's been developed maybe about 3-4 years ago because of the brutality and the extrajudicial killings that has happened with this particular set of police. In your own opinion, who are SARS? How do they operate? What set of what department, or is state police in America, but we know they have that overall FBI and different units of police. Well, within each state police, you have the homicide department, you have maybe the fraud department, the federal agency, child abuse. What exactly is special in your own opinion? Because obviously you might not be able to address it completely. But what is the special anti-robbery squad, and why were they created in Nigeria?
Well, it's according to the IG, it dates back to the years of Sunday Adewusi. That's like 1992. Yeah, someone mentioned about it, and basically they are a tactical response squad. They morphed from what we grew up, the mobile police, that we grew up to know in the and then they're more of a tactical. That was the thinking. However, over time, I've seen them operate in my visits to Nigeria. you can hardly identify them. You know, if you're caught unawares, it's easy for you to assume that they are armed robbers. Their mode of operation mirrors the chaos of our lives as Nigerians.
So does that not
The
make it
chaos of
suitable? Does that not make it suitable if their mode of operation mirrors the chaos of our lifestyle,
our lives, of our existence as a people in Nigeria?
of our existence?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. What I say that is that, you know, we have so many demons that chase us when we're in Nigeria. No light, no water, hold up, you know, failed appointments, this,
Okay,
that,
okay,
family
I
issues.
understand. So
And then,
metaphorically,
and then on top of that, you now have SARS.
yeah.
Now, and then you don't know, you know, you could be on the road and you could be pulled over, and, you know, their mode of operation is very threatening. And they are at the heart of it. When I say it mirrors the chaos, yeah, I was just being specific earlier. But I say it mirrors the chaos is the fact that I told you earlier on in the afternoon before we hooked up that the people, and I was about to say that too in relation to the previous question, the people who took over mirrored those who conquered, enslaved, dominated, and exploited us. And so when they appeared as our rulers, their mode of operation was still along those lines, at least talking down on us.
100%.
And we've had bouts of military rule and abuses everywhere, that people use power and influence and that kind of thing. So much so that SARS operating in that setup didn't really look out of order. Initially, it was like for criminals, if you're a criminal. But where it went out of date was the fact that in later days now, fairly recently, there's a new set of people around. They're called the tribe of youth.
Okay.
That's what Bukwa Wishika,
Okay.
the chairman of First Bank, that's what he called them. He called them the tribe of youth. They're obeying, they're in touch, they are aware, they're expressive, they're young, they have money. The ways they make money these days is not like the days of old. You know, Burna Boy and Wizkid and Davido and P-Square together have made all the money that Sonny Ade could have made in 100 years. No disrespect, but, you know, I'm talking about album sales and attention. You understand? Sonny Ade at his own time, we were buying records. Now, millions of downloads.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are different eras. That's why I'm just for highlight, you know. So these kids are free, they're moving about, and these officers who are meant to be looking for criminals who are flashy are picking on them. And it has been a very, very volatile exchange and fatal in lots of circumstances where people get shot or detained or manhandled or assaulted. So they came out now and said, look, we can't handle this stuff. We can't handle this shit. It's got to stop. And everyone's aghast. Just as I said, the military has abused power, the police too. Look at the history of Nigeria. The military have always been prominent. The police have just always been backup. You understand? They've never really held power. Even in this civilian dispensation, they are the ones who have been holding ground, but they've not been well funded or taken care of. And then you have parts of the police that these guys operate from, and they're like a terror to these young kids.
So
that's what happened.
So sorry to cut you. So what would you say triggered the transition from the likes of them hunting down the Adewusis of this world or of that time towards the tribe of youths of this time? Because the parallels would be absolutely different.
Okay.
What would you, do you understand what I mean?
First of all, sorry to correct if I miscommunicated. Sunday Adewusi was the IG at that time.
Oh, okay.
He wasn't a criminal.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, secondly, where did the
so let's say they were created in the times of like the Shino Rambles, of that time. What triggered the transition of them stopping to hunt the likes of Shino Rambos, which
Shino
we know
Rambos
are totally different from the modern day Yahoo boys, even though they could be loud, or and even if we don't go down that.
I understand you. If the Shino Rambos were what they were hunting down, then these guys now paid attention to the job men, the 19 boys, the 419 boys. Because after a while, armed robbery wasn't really it, actually. When you could actually call a client and stage him and tell him what to advise and get a transfer. And then those 19 boys now morphed into Yahoo boys, right? If you agree with me. So, yeah. So the entry criteria to that crime path became lower and lower as a result of technology.
Right.
And they draw attention to themselves because they're young and their conduct.
Brilliant.
Just have I answered that question?
100%. I didn't want there to be any disconnect. It was just a tricky question, but you you bridged it properly. So yeah. So SARS in itself, you mentioned they were, so in correction, you said they were created by the Adewusis. I don't know who he is, but obviously you said the IG. So in terms of their operations, who exactly are they accountable to? Is it like the IG or the Commissioner of Police or the DPO of their local station where they
should be answerable to the State Commissioner of Police, and the district police officers are answerable to the State Commissioner of Police, because they do have territories. I'm not a policeman, but very regular. You always hear them talk about Area F, Area G, and all that kind of a thing. And then, obviously, when we go home, sometimes we have run-ins with all these people, so we know, so yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So in all their operations or atrocities and all the lack of professional conduct that they carry out, if they're accountable to a DPO, are you saying to me that it's an oversight that the DPO doesn't know that these things are happening, or he knows that they are happening, but because whatever income that they gain from their foul play, they pay, it trickles down to him, he turns a deaf eye to it? Is that the normal?
Well, this takes me back to something that Tupac said. He said that the Crips and the Bloods thought that they're the baddest gangs in LA. But when he went to New York, the police officer in New York schooled him that the police are the baddest gang. Yeah. And following after saying that, there's also the fact that these policemen are well underfunded. You know the conditions, the videos of the police college and your memories of police barracks, even when we were growing up in Nigeria, they haven't changed. These people live under the worst or adverse conditions. On top of that, they are not motivated to conduct themselves in the best manner. And then adding all this to the mix, and us, because if we're looking at our problems as Nigerians, sometimes I expect that we should be more holistic. And if we really question things and look at them in detail, there's nobody, they don't have an ombudsman for Nigerian police. There's no regulatory body, like NYPD or there's Police Federation in America. They obviously have something like that here. They have adequate representation everywhere. Here, you have the police, you have the internal affairs, you have the internal affairs, which is policing the police. You have the ombudsman, then you have the Crown Prosecution Service. So power is not concentrated in their hands in one place. And if you earlier I was mentioning about our constitution, I can't remember where the question related to constitution, but this is another intersect of the constitution, whereby the police is managed federally under the AIG. The AIG is only answerable to the commander-in-chief. So when the payment for the police comes, it comes through the AIG, approval of the commander-in-chief to the AIG, he disburses to his commissioners. And then the state commissioner is not answerable to the state governor.
Or not?
No!
Okay.
So the federal structure sort of like sabotages any well-intended intentions or initiatives because it is not effective. It's centrally controlled, and just as it's centrally controlled, till it filters or cascades down to the DPO level, nobody's accountable to anyone.
So
if there's a scandal,
so,
cover themselves up.
So 1 second. If the state police is not accountable to the state governor, why do they call the governor the chief security officer of their states?
It's a flaw in the Nigerian constitution because everything was structured just to suit a certain region's agenda. Everything federal. So because of that federal central hierarchy, the chain of command just flows one way.
Okay.
Just like at this stage now, nobody knows the troops who came or moved from Bonny Camp. Bonny Camp is in Lagos. They should know every officer that is there. If the governor is the chief security officer, that's it. By the time they leave Bonny Camp, they should have alerted the governor. By the time they got to the station, they would have given a situation report. Somebody should have alerted the governor. They didn't report to the governor. The governor just had shooting.
But we're not too sure about that because even the governor right now, we don't know whether he's telling fibs or he's giving the truth. But he's telling
fibs, and he's exploiting the fact that people have not really addressed this problem. The gap, the disconnect between the governor, his position as an executive, and still subservient to a central oligarch like we have at the moment is a major flaw.
Okay, so let me paint this narrative and see whether you agree with me. Well, because we spoke at length about the structure of Nigeria, how it came into being, the transformation of the army from the defenders of the Niger Company, and obviously out of that a section of security is being pulled out, which we call the police, and how the current leaders, not current leaders, but leaders, a blanket of leaders all came and just ruled down their geographical line, with their own selfish interests at heart. Now, you now saying to me that the police that is centrally ruled has is not accountable to the state government, who is the chief security officer of that state. Would you not say...
No, don't get me wrong. What I'm trying to tell you is that at state government, for example, in Lagos State, for example, by the time the AIG appoints a state commissioner for Lagos State, it's going to, get introduced to the governor anyway. Yeah. And, to keep things going, security vote is there for them.
I understand that. But what I was trying
they're working together.
I understand that. But what I was
trying to answerable to the state governor. If he's from another part of town, and there's ulterior motives elsewhere, you can sideline the governor and follow the instructions of it.
So therein my point that isn't it easy with each leader, the central government, now ensuring that again they give all the top policemen, like the IG of police, the commissioner of police. Also, I don't know if that is individual, if that is state.
Commissioners operate on the state.
Okay, so the IG of police, if they give them autonomous power, and then they systematically, because I'm looking at the mindset of these SARS people, they systematically make sure that they suppress all provisions that make life comfortable for minor recruits in the police, which are the people that are thrown out, making sure that life is just miserable for them. Because when life continues to be miserable for them, they operate under a form of oppression and anger. So when a hungry man is an angry man, And
Then too, they can't handle, they say a kid holding a phone worth, whatever, and driving another car worth and that, and they, you kid, where are you from? You must be a fraudster.
exactly.
Okay, show me your proof of legitimacy. If they look, there's a way the police stop you here and question you. It's a script that they master. We don't have a script. We don't have it. As I said, there's no regulatory body overseeing Nigerian police. There's no ombudsman. There's no internal affairs. And those key accountabilities need to be scoped and defined into their mode of operation. The same thing. There's also a case for state police, but in a country like ours, where we're still grappling with another host of other issues, if I get elected the governor of my state now, I will use the state police answerable to me because it's state police to go and route my. So there's a risk of that. So that's why that happens. But yeah, taking for the police is something that should happen, and it's part of the SARS protest. It was part of it. It was, it's one of the things that happened to us. The message is always lost, even the well-intentioned ones. These kids were shouting, better pay for police, this, that. It's the same police that did not ensure their safety.
Yeah, but on that point, even if they were agitating for better pay for police that has been sort of trapped in a box, in a pressure box for so long, better pay won't solve out all his problems at once. So no matter what the percentage of increase of his wages are, his mindset, his training, everything that's been embedded in him is still that go out, harass people, act in a way. Do you think better pay, in your own opinion again, do you think better pay would make any difference?
There's something they call attitude, behavior, and culture. Anything you want to change, look at the attitudes of the people, look at their behaviors, and look at the culture. You can influence the attitudes, which can have a change on their behavior. But cultures take time to change. In some places, in some circumstances, it takes years to change a culture. One of the good things about the police as it's constituted today, the IG, the guy in charge of Nigerian police, is well educated, well exposed. He's worked in the Interpol. He's well traveled and exposed. But to translate that exposure and knowledge into Nigerian police, he would encounter stumbling blocks of attitude, behavior, and culture. Also, too, there needs to be a better perception of the police. They've always had an image problem in Nigeria. When we were young, so remember, they've changed the uniforms up to about 3 times. It's because of the perception. The same challenge again. So
you,
but yeah,
are you saying that you have faith in the IG of police and his words, even though he's the same IG of police?
No, don't put words in my mouth. I express my expectation. I express my expectation of him. Not him personally, but whoever occupies that position.
So okay. So what do you think? Okay, so that being that, what do you now think could change that culture so that his own ideas and the expectation which you, me, and many just liberal-minded Nigerians have of him for occupying that post, how he could trickle those ideas into a workable action, something that could work within the ranks
where these kids said they don't want to discuss. They're no leader. They're just demanding, because the way governance is run in Nigeria at the moment, it's still like in the 19th century. Command and control, domineer and beat down. It would be nice to see a new recruitment drive into the Nigerian police. It would be nice to see a re-imaging and changing the attitudes and behavior with a view to changing the culture, it would be nice to see transparency and, you know, and lots of public relations and, you know, reaching out to the people to ensure them that we're here to serve you. But historically in Nigeria, people of uniform are not, they've never conducted themselves as if they want to serve you. The policeman here is duty-bound. If you see somebody fall down, stop and inquire and call an ambulance. Is called to serve. You know, their oath is based on I am serving. In most uniform professions, police, army, and everything, it's to follow order and heed the highest bidder. So much so that, you know, there's a guy who's reputed to have so much money, I don't need to mention his name, but was pulled by the collar recently because he had an entourage of policemen, because he's a rich man. And why does he have to do that? Why do our police have to be following one rich man? So much so he was even sending these policemen on errands. You understand? And it became ridiculous. He was pulled into the police headquarters. Excuse me, what's your designation? Who are you? You know, so there's a lot that could be done, but obviously it's all part of demanding a better society, a better country. I'd like to see the guy there do it, but I don't think so, and I don't think it's not this set of eggs that will reform the police. There has to be a new set of people that are driving it, and there has to be an executive backing. At the moment, they're just doing it to maintain status quo.
Okay, but you know, where we are now, if I'm looking at it in a holistic view, because the police is the one that has the bad image. The policeman is the one that creates the atrocity. Do you understand? So, yeah, the police has a bad image, but it's one policeman that goes out and, you know, creates the atrocity that adds to that layer of. So, in a way, that's the culture that you're speaking about. You know, the whole culture that you're speaking about, and
the entire culture.
Yeah.
The fact that, you know, you walk into a police station and you know the culture. Look, okay, let me give you another dimension where Nigeria. Where we're perilous in a situation. You know, we don't have a database of anything.
So
of criminals in
there's
Nigeria.
databases of VBN, there's databases of mobile phone customers, but it hasn't been integrated.
Criminal database for security purposes.
But they could easily integrate those now. That's all they need now. That's where it starts from.
Look, when a policeman makes an arrest here, it's entered digitally on a system. They've confirmed your identity, or they know somebody that knows you.
But even that took a while though, because I remember the time where they have to take you. You could use like 6 or 7 different names when they stop you. If you didn't have a driver's license, you could say, I'm Tom Brown, I'm Annie Jones, I'm Tiger Woods. Every time they stop you, just give them a different name.
Let me tell you an interesting thing. Let me tell you an interesting thing, and you go and check it out when you want to renew your passport. If you go and take your passport photograph now, and you want to renew your UK passport, right? You know, in those days, you either scan and send them a JPEG of your passport, or you send, you know, or you drop it off the post office with the application, wherever. You know, there's a code that comes with those passports now, the digital passports. Okay. That code is what you enter onto the UK government website.
Okay.
And it auto generates that picture.
Serious.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to tell you with that narrative is that identity is power for the government, for everyone. When it comes to identities of criminals in Nigeria, there's none. So somebody who's a pedophile in Port Harcourt, if he bribes his way out, can go and be living in Kano, and nobody traces them. When he's arrested there, he will now give them another name. He will move to Sokoto.
That's what happened to the recent guy, the Port Harcourt hotel killer that they recently caught now and sentenced to death.
Exactly. So the absence of that has provided a channel whereby all sorts of people, even the police and the political class, are using to recycle elements of dubious characters, and they're used for different kinds of purposes. So much so that the police know the criminals. It just depends on who sent you.
So how do we lock that leaking tap?
Well, the police, they need to be seen as incorrigible. Metropolitan police, British police broadly. Incorruptible, incorrigible too. Yeah. You understand? Even though we know that, there are things happening in the background that we don't need to know, and then, they're bad cops, they're good cops. But at least there should be a mechanism where the bad cops can be caught and prosecuted. There's nothing like that.
The percentage should be higher as well.
Yeah. And you can't question. But the police itself is not even transparent or open. The disconnect between, I mentioned something earlier, the UK police, ombudsman, they have the internal affairs. Then externally, they have the Crown Prosecution Service to deal with. So they actually, they're all part of the Ministry of Justice or law enforcement, but they are all independent of each other. And then the Minister of the Home Secretary is a civilian, and they are all answerable to a civilian. In Nigeria, the Internal Affairs Minister is Rauf Aregbesola. We didn't even hear a word from him because he's a political figurehead. The AIG doesn't talk to him. He goes straight to Mr. President. So when we were in school, they said, balance of power, democracy, legislator, this, that. Apart from those clear definitions and delineations, it still needs to be filtered into things like police so that we have separation of powers. You can't act autonomously because you must be accountable to the next person. That's because there's nothing like that in Nigeria. People take advantage. That is why a detachment of troops will go to a target and start firing. We don't know under whose command they are. And this is what these kids were rebelling against. The structure that allows this to happen is not the structure we want to negotiate with. Because they will always pull the rugs under you. They can invite you for a meeting and tell the police to arrest you and lock you up.
Wow. So at that point then, the protest began because obviously all the impunity and all the atrocities that they were
human rights abuses,
human rights abuses, snatching of phones, armed robbery, in terms of people being led to the cash points to withdraw money at one point. So who were the initial? Was it a coalition of youths that then came together and said, we're going to reignite this hashtag and launch this protest? Because I asked that because before Fowles and Runtown came on that protest, there was a guy and a girl. I can't remember her name now, but she's actually on the panel of inquiry for the Lagos State whatever it's called, panel of inquiry that the president said that each state should begin. She's actually in there. She's a short girl with dreadlocks on. I watched the video before the protest actually took off, when these people, about a bunch of them, maybe about 100 of them, decided to go to Lagos State Secretariat in Alausa and protest that they want to speak to I don't know, maybe the IG of police or so, but they decided to sleep outside the secretariat for 3 days. I don't know if you saw that video. For 3 days.
I was following them initially.
So it was on the third or fourth night of their agitator protest that Fowles and Runtown now came in and decided to take over the protest, and obviously it gained momentum from there. So the people who started it, they sort of were weaned or faded out of the equation, and Fowles and Runtown became the figurehead from that point on. But yet, when people were asked to come and dialogue, even way before Davido went to Abuja also, because for a while he was not apparent in the protest. When people were asked to come and dialogue, the voice of the youths that we were hearing is that there's no leader, there's no representative, and there's no one who's going to negotiate on our behalf. In your opinion, do you think that this protest would have made more headway and in a way even prevented the massacre,
the drama,
if there was one, a leader, or two, a spokesperson, three, a negotiator, or four, a representative for the people? Apart from the different coalitions who now jumped on the bandwagon, because I know people did their thing and they did extremely well. But would you think any of those four, leader, representative, negotiator, or spokesperson, would have prevented the protest being drawn out, or was it really necessary for that protest to be drawn out so that the government could know that we will see?
No, I don't want to say that. I think with the, it's quite unfortunate, the events of the past 1 week or so, the shooting at the toll gates, the loss of lives, the loss of businesses, looting. I don't support that. I think it's very, very important for us to separate the two. The people who are protesting, as you mentioned, as you chronicle the story, yes, I sort of been following this guy. We call him Segamega.
Okay.
On Twitter.
Yeah, Segamega.
Yeah. He was the one that was, as I understood it, he was the pioneer. It was his pioneer idea with some people.
From a while back.
From a while back. And the hashtag was reignited recently, and they protested. Now, specific to the question, without repeating you, the absence of a leader did not escalate the issue. The fact that the kids refused to present a leader and enter into discussions with the government too was not a bad thing. I felt it was part of actually getting the right attention, just as the few bandy of them that first camped out Alausa Secretariat before you said Runtown and everybody joined them. And it all grew organically. My explanation to that organic growth is that this hashtag has been dormant. They've asked for this 5 times in the last 5 years. They've always been run round in circles. And, the government didn't manage it the last 5 years well. So at this stage, you say, well, we're not negotiating. This is what we want, and we want to see you do it. And we don't have a leader. It didn't really. And then what was the other two you said? I think not having a leader, not wanting
a spokesman, a negotiator, and a representative.
The spokesman, representative, negotiator. Well, in normal discussions where there's a conflict, obviously somebody has to speak.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was what was expected from the government end. But I still think that the government only asked for those dismissively. There was no genuineness in those requests. And the kids to read through that, not only with that response, not read through the response, but based on what's happened in the past. So at this stage, they were uncompromising. And it's not an issue of disrespect as people in government initially saw it, or as an affront to our government. It's the fact that, okay, we're prepared to conduct ourselves peacefully, but these are our requests. There were no riots at that time. It was when this thing grew organically and it went spread like wildfire. Why? Because these people are notorious nationwide. Everybody knows them.
But the government did respond. I think it was like the day 3 or day 4 it was day 3 or day 4 of the protest that the IG again came back and said, okay, we've heard.
Davido met the IG. They had a conversation. They were in Abuja. I saw that too. Interestingly, that dialogue went well. I'll give the IG enough respect for the fact he had a good listening ear. He listened. But everything was, they left there with vague promises. Davido is an artist. He's not skilled in negotiating. And over the time too, what I noticed is that
because he negotiates his music deals. But go ahead.
Skilled for that purpose.
Yeah.
That's why I said he's an artist. Yeah. When it comes to a struggle that is more, when it comes to an issue with, the issue with SARS.
Roots deeper than his knowledge.
Yeah. Well, it's not that it's not. He spoke as a human being, which was good enough. But getting the AIG to commit on his words and for them to follow up. Eventually, after that meeting with the AIG, there was another fire elsewhere. They met over the weekend. By Monday, attention had shifted from Abuja to elsewhere. So, and when the kids were at Alausa again, that someone who was trying to calm them down, he was helpless. So for the simple fact that he couldn't even say anything that, look, okay, the police, this is what we are going to do. Because everything happens from federal, as I said. So the kids knew that we were joking. And then he now ran off to Aso Rock. He told Buhari. Buhari just laughed. He grunted and laughed. And he was captured on TV. And that infuriated these kids as well. They are young and impatient. And they regrouped. The more the attention grew on the thing. And then it culminated with, getting a bandy of them, regrouping and appearing. And then all of a sudden, some people who were overzealous, or I don't know what you want to call them, but the people who employed Lagos State thugs to go and disperse those kids, were they helping the situation?
I wouldn't really say, because there's no authoritative fact that the government unleashed thugs.
These guys, there's no authoritative fact, but these guys came into BRT bus. They were being cajoled and encouraged by.
When we were going to do riots when we were in uni back in the days, we went in numbers in BRT buses now. From Lagos, when we want to go and fight in Ogupoli, back from Lasu, Oshapa Molwe, from Lasu Ojo, all the way to Agowoyi.
Okay. Well,
and we weren't paid nothing. We did that because, territorial, like as they have postcode wars here and stuff like that. We just did that because we feel we've been disrespected in a way, or someone's trying to tread on our territory. But there wasn't, so the easiest excuse is to say, and that leads me again to what I was going to say. The easiest excuse is to say the government and I'm not saying you, but the easiest narrative that they've been painting all through this without authoritative facts is that government unleashed some certain thugs and whatnot. And the other bit was the fact that they keep on saying hoodlums hijacked this thing and the hoodlums started looting. But protest is an opportunity for that's why they call it an unrest. Protest is an opportunity for violence to thrive. And in every protest around the world, violence does thrive. George Floyd, we spoke about.
No doubt about that. But the fact for me remains that there was a disconnect between the government and these kids. A much more skilled. Look at what happened. Look at the kids' rebellion here when they decided Brexit, and how they started speaking. They didn't riot, but there was a well-recognized president. Look at what happened with the lady, the young girl fighting for global awareness about waste and the
Yeah,
environment. Basically,
yeah.
they're a bunch of young kids. They got attention as far back. They got to the corridors of the United Nations, and even
But
in
that's
that,
because they
one
have
of
the speaker,
hold on, hold on.
they have the face, they have the leader, they have the negotiator. Now, Nigerian youths doing everything right in that riot, my own opinion is, when you do not have no spokesperson, how is there going to be any negotiation that's going to take place? You know, and yes, because you don't have a spokesperson, you don't have a confidant to put your trust in that could say on your behalf.
No, there was a trust deficit all over every aspect in our lives in Nigeria.
Okay.
For the fact that the kids didn't trust themselves, for the fact that the kids didn't appoint a leader or a spokesperson, doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have that trust. What I understand is that they decided on like everybody being effective. Everybody is a leader. The ethos of everybody being a leader, it gets more results than I'm your leader, I
But the
represent you
government is
all.
not going to speak to everyone.
The government is not going to speak to everyone, but the government just needed to like say, okay, I've seen your request. We're going to have a parley with the IG. We're going to do this, and and the government needed to be more responsive and more sincere. Hold on, more sincere, more responsive, and more open.
But I'm just playing devil's
The issues,
advocate, you know, just to see
I
where
know,
I
I know,
would.
no. Yeah, the issues raised by these kids are pertinent issues, borders on their safety, their well-being, and security.
But the government
And
did
the
do that.
general,
The government
what did
did
you
do
do?
that.
What did
They
the
said
government?
they're going to reform SARS. They said they're going to.
The kids wanted something more than lip service.
But it's not going to. But it has to be lip service before anything else.
No.
Words will precede every
Based
form
on
of action. Yeah, it would have to be lip. You would because you do not have a representative. I would have to use your medium of communication to communicate with you. You're going to have to hear it, because you know that definition of communication, that it's when one person speaks and the other person understands. Now, if I speak and the next person doesn't understand, it could be one of two things. It could be they've turned a deaf ear, or they choose, intentionally to misinterpret what I'm saying. But it doesn't mean what I've communicated is wrong. So, and again, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm not in support of the government.
I'm not sounding like a rebel here. What I'm trying to highlight is that, okay, you see, the kids said they didn't have a leader. They never said they didn't have a spokesman. They spoke as a team. At least they came out with the five of five demands. They came out of a list of demands. I think one of the other challenges that impacted, I wouldn't want to say negatively and I wouldn't want to say too positively, but there was definitely an impact. On the crest of the EndSARS wave were the other monsters and demons that we were dealing with in our life. Bad governance, lack of accountability, lack of trust, many of the lacks that we can talk. And because all these ones were there and they were behind that huge threat of EndSARS, which all bundled together the same old thing, there was an element of frustration. They are the younger ones. They made mistakes, or they could have done it in a different way. But the clear thing to me that I see is that the kids, in their foolishness, highlighted a whole lot of weaknesses in our government, a whole lot of aspects of our governance that are ridiculous. If the kids said end SARS, why would you ban SARS and then create SWAT? Following discussion you had with Davido, following the other things that you want to do. The justification is that you needed a tactical response side because of the security situation in the country, which is a valid question. But why didn't you come out with a much more refined media campaign about how you're going to do it, not just a test announcement?
Probably because they didn't want to give any room for crime to thrive.
Definitely, yes, I do agree. That's understandable. Yoruba says that in the absence of the cat, the rodent takes
the ruler.
out of their house.
Yes.
So yes, there's no country where the police is not on top of their game, or at least the key aspects of security. So they needed to be on call.
And then again, having said that, I just thought of that. Them saying they're creating SWAT doesn't mean instantly SWAT was implemented, because he clearly said in that, oh, they're going to start training in another 2 weeks, and it's going to take, you know, so about maybe 2 or 3 weeks before they roll them out.
He also had a typical response of old. And that's what the message was not packaged well. In a time of crisis, in a time of conflict, these kids were asking for something. They were emphatic and they were direct. And we knew that everybody more or less knew that there was a problem. Look, when Britain was ready to leave Brexit, Europe, the tone of government changed. The campaign of the government changed. Things that were going to change as a result of that decision were being shared and communicated before the how and the what unfolded. These guys just went straight to the what. No how, no open transparency, no this kind of thing. Okay, yes, this SARS thing, okay, it's been a problem. How can we make it? Because I guess this is where they made a mistake. They tried to paint the whole country with one brush. In the north, the SARS, apparently, from what I gather, are doing some sort of a good job. Nobody complains from there. Why? Because they don't have younger ones driving in cars and being stereotyped. Yeah, being stereotyped like the Yahoo boys. In the south, we are much more obeying, more relaxed and loud. You know, less conservative like the players up north. And the guys that they're supposed to come and patrol the streets are outsiders. And when they come, they just see young ones, arrogant, cocky. They can't handle them. They just deal with, they respond in the tactics they know.
Silence or rage.
Yeah. So now, if there's a complaint from a certain section of the country, is it not enough to actually refine that, okay, set new guidelines, okay, these kids, yes, there's nothing new with a guy holding an iPhone. You have no right to address a kid with dreadlock. Because he's driving a fast car or a fancy car and he's dressing fresh, he looks like a superstar or whatever, or a movie star. Is it not enough for you to pull him over? Or because you see, there's no reason why a SARS officer should be taking people to the cash point to withdraw money for them. There's no, the police have a big problem. Look, I mentioned earlier, somebody who goes around with hordes of policemen. Even some of us who are talking about this NSAS, is this SARS like people that provide our security when we're moving around in Lagos? When we want to have parties, right? To make sure that our friends are secure. Then we pay off, go and speak to somebody, they now bring a detachment of people. We all have abused the police. And the police, it's a hard ask. But the reputation that the police in this country have, is universal. And the same thing with American police and many countries. We need to see ourselves heading in that direction.
But it's never going to be a microwave thing.
Yeah.
It's going to be, that was exactly what my point is. It's going to be something that would have to happen over time. And over time, again, according to the sort of example you use, I tell you, these are my plans, okay? But this is what I'm going to do. You want NSAS, okay? We would NSAS, but in 3 or 4 weeks' time, we will create another form of operatives who would tackle the menace that SARS was tackling. The people who were there, we would redeploy them.
Where the SARS actually tackling the menace.
Well, as you said,
robberies all over the place.
In the north,
we don't see.
Yeah, in the north they were doing a good job. So it brings me back to what we were saying.
They never had issues in the north. You can't just arrest people. You don't know whose son is who.
Exactly.
If you look rich and you're arrested, it's just one phone call. By the time he speaks the local language,
but then
they're calling it.
Again, this is what I'm going to say. So it brings me, that's what I'm saying, it brings me back to what we were talking about maybe half an hour ago in terms of who are they accountable to. Because if the DPO or the Commissioner of State that they're accountable in that state is not reporting these extrajudicial killings, these armed robberies, these, you know, wrong things that they're doing to the IG, and the youths are just coming in a country of 200 million people, and maybe 99 or, you know, sporadically get killed at different junctions or years in life. If it's not really amplified, like if it's really not amplified and like amplified on social media or such, and then if the commissioner of police for that state in which these incidences or states are taking place in is not pressing on these issues as pressing issues to the IG, he could feel the need to think, you know, or you know, if the commissioner of police is saying, no, don't mind them, these people that they're killing, they're Yahoo boys, the IG has no need of thinking, you know, the men under the commissioner are you know, doing it, and that's a fair point.
Well, for me, it still goes back to the concentration of powers. You are the head of police in Nigeria. In each state in Nigeria, you have somebody, a commissioner, who reports to you. On the federal level, there must be people who are regulating those people. And even you, there must be standards that the entire force need to meet, that you are ensuring. Then on the state level too, the miscreants or the ones that misbehave within the force, there must be a mechanism where they can be spotted, treated, and used as an example, as a deterrent to everybody. That doesn't involve duties of the IG. But ironically, the appointment of the state commissioner via the IG, they're all political. The IG will appoint his boys, people who will make him look good. It's not done on merit. And these people have histories, and they all cover, you know, as I said, the police are the baddest gang, they're the biggest gang in the world. Any country in their police, they are worse than the criminals they are fighting. Because they know them and the criminals they are in cahoots with each other. You understand? They know the criminals, but it just depends on who's unfortunate or who needs to be done. So yeah, so that line of accountability and that structure is not there in Nigeria. And then again, the civil liberties of authorities, the human rights, organizations, and people who serve as observers or who measure the effectiveness of how the rule of law is upheld and how healthy our democracy is and how safe our environment is, have no say in those matters. So the AIG collects the national budget and disburses it to the guy who's in charge of the finance of the Nigerian police, and then they now filter it down the other states are based on their chronism, and nothing, you see, and no, you know, nobody can question them. The police don't have a union. The police have a union here. They have a union in America.
I'm sure they would have a union in Nigeria. Are you sure they don't? I'm sure they. I'm sure they would. Okay, so basically, you're saying, like, if all of that is the umbrella in which all the operatives and all departments of police are formed, again, as the youths were saying, that means even if that SWAT came into effect, it would be the same.
It's just old
thing. Operators, how do they say that? Remember,
a new glass,
yeah,
a new bottle. It was obvious they're incapable of making the changes now. The government is broke, but the kids chose the leaderless approach, but not without the fact that they don't have a structure. They do have a structure. They're well organized, but they took the leaderless approach because they don't need to. The main thing is, this is what we want. This is what is expected. Why aren't you listening to us? Why are we being shot? Why aren't there no answers? And the AIG and his team were unable to provide that.
Okay. So
that is the first thing that the AIG should have addressed, or his team that reports to him. We have a large percentage of young men that become restless. There's a disconnect, there's tension between them and police. Then, okay, you know what? Let us educate you why we're doing this. And then the kids too. Why wasn't an open discussion just opened up straight away to bridge the gap between the kids and the police? Because they don't have the know-how to deal with such conflicts. Everything is command and control. Everything is because we have the power and then the structure. But that's not how this is 21st century. In 1960, you could beat the shit out of people just because they've raised their voice. Not in 2020. That's what these kids are telling us.
But again, going back onto that police whole umbrella and how they operated under them, they reign. The SWAT, the SARS coming out and just taking the impunity of the police a step higher. It shouldn't really be surprising to Nigerians who pay themselves or pay their way through every police checkpoint in the first place. Do you understand?
No.
So
no.
That's something that a culture that we've accepted. So, and in a culture that we've accepted, there's always going to be certain elements that are going to abuse that culture to a higher degree of what is acceptable to you, which is what we call oppression. So at that point where they begin to now cry out that, okay, this oppression is too much. Isn't it fair for the IG to say, well, you accepted it, you live by it, so just bear with us while we try and make change to this culture. But in the meantime, we can't leave a vacuum open so that disorderliness could thrive. We have to put a structure in place, or we have to put something in place.
It still boils down to crisis management or conflict management. As I was telling you earlier on, we're not good with. Look, when you see that there's an issue amongst friends, amongst our peers out there, pay attention. The opportunities to resolve conflict. The presence of conflict doesn't mean that there's an issue. But in our clients, when there's a conflict, then it escalates very quickly. There's always conflict everywhere. It is managing that conflict, understanding parties to establish meeting grounds, mini grounds.
So what are the frameworks that could be put in place to manage such conflict so that things like this, and obviously things like the massacre in Lekki, would not repeat itself? Because it
depends on a lot of things. Interesting, you mentioned something just briefly before I started talking about how we as a populace have actually compromised the police.
Yeah.
By tossing them handouts even when they don't ask for it. Right? So that's a fair statement. If the government response was, for example, if I had the IGs listening here, one is that, okay, let us manage our communication with these people that are protesting. Two, let us communicate in such a way that, okay, we've banned SARS, but bear in mind that SARS has a function that is critical to our operation, and we need a replacement. We are bringing out SWAT, but the code of conduct for SWAT and their rules of engagement with the public will be more defined. As a matter of fact, we are open to suggestions as to what the expectations are and that kind of thing. While you cannot state what the police job is and how they do their job, but we want to know, we want you to be clear, about certain things. That if you get arrested, these are the things, these are your rights as a citizen, and no police officer has the right to breach them. That's a win-win situation.
Well, indirectly, that's what you said now is exactly what the IG said. Indirectly, he might not have put it in those exact words, but the embodiment of all his answers.
He could have said that. He could have said that, but there's no means of monitoring it in Nigeria. As I told you, behind the EndSARS wave, there's a crest of other waves. No light, insecurity, problem this, problem that, problem when they finish for Nigeria.
Now, one by one, those problems start now. So you have to deal with it one by one.
No, the people, the audience that was interacting with the big police chief, more or less couldn't separate. They are young. It's because the doubt that they have in the AIG, was there. Although, to be honest, his audience with Davido, I respected him. He listened. He appeared to be a good listener.
Yeah.
He listened. That one, I watched the entire video twice. He listened. Everybody spoke. They were talking over each other. Then when everybody spoke, then can he speak? He got their position and he explained himself. And from the level he operates, he's much more senior. The guys who are on the front, the guys who are drawing all this attention, the SARS people, to be honest, out of this comfort of where I am, they don't look professional. They don't look like, they don't really. I've seen one of them last time, 2 years ago, I was in Nigeria. One drove up to me. I was on the third mainland, and I just saw a bus fling open, doors open, and I saw them with guns. And, they indicated I should park. We parked. The interaction was smooth. I didn't have an incident with them. But I was like, thank God that I had a bit of civility in me. Because I don't know, if it was somebody else, he could have stepped on the gas and think he wants armed robbers is chasing him. So I don't know. It's the people that they recruited to the force. You can, just as I was talking to you, there are criminals in Nigerian police force. Criminals. Here, if you have a criminal record, you can't work in the police.
Well, you can become a criminal in the police, as we all know. Well,
you can become a criminal. That even makes it worse for you. Because the rigor it takes for you to qualify and meet all the requirements to become a police officer in this country, they vetted your ass. So now you go and commit a crime that you're a police officer. They can find you, they can find your family, and after you've caught you and they've dealt with you, you're still a marksman. That is how it is. In Nigeria, the people, we don't know the, there's no way to ascertain the psychology, the mental well-being of the people who are brandishing these guns in the name of enforcing security.
That's why they ask for part of their fight for fight, that they should go on psychological evaluations and stuff.
Exactly. So, the AI is responding that way. Look, the police don't have a media team. Yeah, you'll be surprised. There's a media team for the police that's responsible about their image.
They have Frank Umba now.
Frank Umba has been there since when we were in last two, or possibly, well, no, after last two, 1992. Well, no, 1990. Bayo Woshika, Bayo Woshika was the last two with us now. Yeah. Bayo Woshika was shot dead in 2009. Frank Umba was there, has been there since that time.
Wow.
Is that a position for where there's a sign that there's any sign of merit? 2009 to now, 11 years. And I'm sure it's been the PRO before that time. It just holds, you see, that's the thing. The organization of the police is not growing. This is part of our democracy. It should be democracy at work. We should be discussing these things. Nigerians don't know we have the expectation that, we're supposed to get light, but we don't know the intricacies why we don't have light. The police supposed to do this, the governor is supposed to do this, if we do this, we do that. But the back office rot is not what we want to really, that's where the problem lies. Just as I was saying earlier, it would take a really honest man in the police echelon to say, you know what, we are overdue for reform, and we must be mature and bold enough to start it, and let the public see that the reform is in place. It's happening. That's what's going to instill confidence, not talking down on people, as I said earlier. Every position that people get, once you're a big man, you want to talk down on others, just like the slave masters did to us. We're still caught up in that slave thinking mindset. We're human beings. So that's why.
But again, that's the culture that Nigeria accepted. Again, interestingly, the generation X now, they're not having it. You know, they are really the world has become a global community. People know how
the world has become more open.
Yeah, exactly. People know what their rights should be. You know, a lot of Nigerian people in their homeschooling, they use foreign syllabuses. You know, which literally shows the kids that you are your own individual from the time you
look. A lot of these behaviors are toxic.
Exactly.
When we were growing up, you have no say about a lot of things.
Yeah.
You know, even the color of the room, the color to the paint your room, you didn't have a say.
You have no say. Say for like how
the shoes they want to buy for you, you can't make a choice.
They say you had was answerable to Koboko.
And that was the norm then. We don't dispute that, but that's not the norm now. We know from our own experiences that we cannot traumatize our children like that. So if we know that we cannot traumatize them, then we should be able to. We are also responsible as older people to be part of an evolving society for the better, not one that is stuck in slaps and knocks and shut up.
Yes, but so that brings us back. So it's funny because everything always leads back to one. It's something I heard from a long back that you know there's no existence of anything from nothing. You know, there always has to be something that births something else. So always
out of the one came the many.
Out of the one came the many. Perfect description. So it boils back to the fact that our leaders, who rule us. You know, I like to use the term ruler because leaders bring up rulers. Leaders bring up more leaders. Rulers rule to oppress people. You know, but our rulers that we have in place in the country, they've created that framework and that structure to continually oppress people, so that in their own selfish interests and how they move forward or their attainment for office, they continue to thrive. And a prime example is lack of empathy from the government and people like Desmond Elliot.
From the home.
Well, yeah, from the home. I would like to use that, you know, umbrella gently, because I still believe within me that there are some people in politics. So someone like Shina Pella, for instance, I saw the fact, I'm sure you saw that clip in the House of Assembly where he said he's exhausted. I even never knew that you had to be called before you could speak. You know, where he said he's exhausted every form of trying to air his voice, you know, on this matter. But the speaker kept shutting him down and he became infuriated, you know. And I seriously think that the government has said, like, they're never just going to listen to the cry of the masses, whatever the situation is. You know, we're a clique, and the man is like the soldier looking at the clique of the soldiers looking at everybody else as bloody civilians. I think that's how political elites and those in the ruling class look at the masses, bloody civilians. And there's nothing that really, you know, that disconnect is so vast, and there's a massive vacuum in between that there's no way, you know, anyone could cross over to the other unless you join the clique. And that is why the cries and the voices of the people are just never heard. And that's why
it might mean more than that, though. It might mean more than that. That's the general parlance. First of all, you see, the idea of leadership in 14th century or the time of Julius Caesar is different from the leadership of now. But leadership has one thing at the core. You got to care. If you don't care, people don't listen to you. You can become the leader, or you can carry the title of the leader, like with the one we have. But we know it's as insensitive can, or detached as detached can be. That's not the leader. So where the attitudes and behaviors that inform how we select our leaders are dictated basically by I'll give you this, I'll give you roads, I'll give you hospital, I'll give you education. So you come like a savior, and then to make sure the savior arrives, basically that the how can I say this now? At the heart of leadership, no, let me say it this way: the myth of the savior, because the savior myth is a myth that has tormented humanity for a long time. The myth of the savior is what has been repackaged as leadership in Nigeria or in Africa.
Okay.
So I come, I'm your savior, I'll do this for you, you get better roads, you get everything. That's just all. And then, oh, when that man walks in, oh yes, Awolowo Ade, Inira Ade, everything was okay, this, that. But the basics that define you as an individual within that setting where your leaders emerge, nobody discusses that. Because Mr. XYZ is now the premier or the governor of he can award contracts to his cronies, he could spread largesse and la vida across a lot of other people that is in his inner circle, and then they could go around talking about how well it's performing. But in that same environment, there are fundamental things. Why does Mutiu, who is Selinot's husband, Seli is selling tomatoes, Mutiu is a organizer. His children need to go to school. Mutiu definitely doesn't have the means to send his child to school. So the child goes to primary school, then his child drops out, and the child works with Mutiu. She's female, she works with Seli, or she goes to do one apprenticeship. And through that path line, there are no opportunities. In another setting where we grew up, our parents were middle class, afforded us school, we had better opportunities. We are few compared to these people on the lower end, the Sekinoto or Mutiu that I was talking about. But when people of our kind, because Mutius can't campaign for election, nobody knows them. It's people like us or that come from middle-class homes or slightly the wherewithal who can campaign for these elections. And when they go, they just go there to cement their own positions or help their cronies. They never deliver anything that is relevant to Mutiu and Seli. They are absolutely disconnected from them. So that is where I feel there's a problem. Because fair enough, they told us since 1999 we have democracy. But what does it mean to be a Nigerian under this setting? Are our rights clear to us as Nigerians? Are our duties and responsibilities clear to us in respect to order? Nobody is talking about that. Everybody will talk about Lasma, Loma, Fashola, Sanwo-Olu, projects, Tinubu. But your rights as an individual, you don't put premium on them. And nobody does. And there's nobody fighting for the Mutius and Seli. Seli sells tomato. Last week, our store was knocked down because the people who don't want hawkers to operate, they confiscated our goods. Mutiu now is a organizer. He teams up with that organizer. He drives Okada. From driving Okada, he now finds some boys who are snatching phones in Gold Up. He needs to do that
so
with
exactly. So right there, so when we're now, so if I now merge where you are now into probably coming towards like the end of this whole scenario, Mutiu and the Selis, they're the so-called hoodlums that the elite are painting, not knowing that they're victim of their own society, because really,
yes,
because really, that's not what they set out to become initially. And if they now see an opportunity of chaos to bring an increment of any kind into themselves, they will seize that opportunity. Because I would like to believe that the Matthew who sees, let's assume ShopRite, for instance, the Matthew who sees that his folks are looting ShopRite, and he thinks, let me just sorry what be by or let me. It's not the same Matthew who will accost you on the road and say, "Oh boy, give me your phone, otherwise I'll stab you." Nah. So,
well, the thing is that, in short, I'm glad that you could relate to my scenario, because it just came to me off the cuff. But the truth is that those are the people that we've not catered for, and those are the people that, you know.
So
today we call them hoodlums.
Exactly. So that's
call them
why.
thugs.
So sorry.
There's the next year we call them less privileged. We always have a word for them, but we absorb the responsibility. They are equivalent. If you look at it, Lee in China, in Shenzhen, can assemble mobile phones and computers. Mutiu can only become a organizer. Even the style of his organizing is even
primitive.
It's primitive, and he's not been able to train.
Yeah.
And there are many. Look at what they made in Nigeria. They call it apprenticeship, but it's the same. But it's then other apprenticeship that they've converted to city and guilds. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. 100%.
So much so that most of the artisans and workmen, they all boast of city and guilds.
Yeah.
And they are standardized, and they at least they could deliver. And there's an opportunity for you to upscale and earn a living. There's lots of people. The guy who sorts my central heating here, he told me a story how he picked up the course, became skilled at it. From there, he's gone into properties, he's gone into other things. There are parts in this part of the world that Mutiu can go through. In China, his contemporary Lee can assemble mobile phones. He doesn't need to speak English. In Nigeria, before Mutiu can learn anything, he has to learn English. Nobody's talking about those barriers. You see, those are the obstacles that prevent value creation. So much so that the Mutius, the Celis, the Rasakis, and all of them, the people you broadly call hoodlums, are caught up in a cycle of torture. And to think that people who we elect, who speak all this grammar, talk, and get there and don't do nothing. All we see is them with their flamboyance in their clothes, in their position, and in the corridors of power. Look at Tinubu, Fashola. I hate their God so much because they knew the digital revolution was coming. Lagos State should be a forefront of providing digital technology. They should have been a digital town to encourage all these boys in computer center and create them and let the young just flourish. You're still building roads and doing all sorts of odd things. So this is where, governance in this 21st century has to be relevant to people.
Well, yeah, okay. Sorry, are you there? I think I'm. Are you there? I'm not sure what's happening there. I think I've lost him. Yeah, I think I've lost Wale. But I think he spoke at length and with a lot of wisdom, and I myself, I relate to so many things that he says and the angles that he's looking at things from. I hope he calls back and I could just round up. I've been on this thing for 2.5 hours. I actually thought we're just going to do an hour, but the discussions about Nigeria is not something that you just sit down and, you know, you just say, I finished. Discussion for Nigeria goes on for days because there's just so much that needs to be done, that could be done, that we do have the power to do as individuals and as the leaders that we elect. But we're not doing our part, and they're not doing their part, and it's like doing the same thing and expecting different results. It's just never going to happen. It's never going to happen, and so it shouldn't be surprising when, you know, chaos just takes a hold of things, and it just explodes. But there's a lot of responsibility that each individual has to take upon himself to make Nigeria a better place. And we just start by being our brother's keeper. You know, each one win one. You know, there's nothing else. That's the quickest fire that spreads. You know, one fire that leads, an explosion just comes in and it scatters everything. But each one win one is a spread that just, it engulfs, and it, you know, one tree at a time, and, you know, and it spreads, and everybody has a knowledge of what's going on. You know, nothing becomes alien. You could see, you know, when it's going to spread to you, because you could see it 10 trees away. That let me see if he's back actually. No, I don't think he's back. You could, so it's quite sad. Hopefully he will call me. The whole situation, there he is. I'm really hoping that we could leverage off of this, and the same things won't have to repeat itself. I've just added in.
Yeah.
Yes,
sorry,
sir.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. The battery.
Okay. These things, they happen. I was saying this thing, we scheduled like an hour or two. It's been like almost close to 3 hours now, actually, and just a little under 3 hours, 2.5 hours. So it's actually been quite interesting, and it's really been. I was just giving a little sort of.
It's been exhausting.
Nigeria.
Yeah, it's been exhausting.
That's exactly what I said. That Nigeria, I mean, in other words, it's just something that would exhaust you. You can't just sit down and say you're just going to talk about it off the tip of your tongue. You get tired at doing it. But
I don't get tired these days, to be honest, though. I think we should open ourselves. I said I don't get tired these days. You know why? I've seen that we get tired, and it's like there's some sort of resignation that comes with that when we retire.
Resignation to fate.
It's none of our.
It go better.
Yeah. I think where we are now is that we all have a lot to contribute. Nobody knows it all, and that makes it very, very interesting.
I said exactly the same whilst you were away. So if maybe with just 2 or 3 more questions, and then we could round it up so that I can release you. I know everybody. Just think there's so much things that I'm going away to think about from this conversation tonight, and, you know, hopefully we could, you know, each one win one. Just start trying to, you know, share the knowledge and, you know, change the narrative, and slowly, you know, bite into what the right culture should be to bring Nigeria to the place that we need it to be. Because as I said, we're all stakeholders in Nigeria, no matter where we are.
We are.
Earth. So the question is, for the Mutus and the Selinots of Nigeria, what would be the way forward for them? Because that's where we were when we got disconnected. Skills acquisition. Yeah. Okay. And then
skills acquisition.
And sorry, there was another question alongside that. And how could the the youths who have done exceptionally well in sort of, as you said, highlighting all the ills that they've had to go through this 2-week agitation and protests, and regardless of whether they want to say it's hijacked, I say Arajaliwa. Do you understand? That don't work. Like so it's part of the parcel, you know. But how could the real youths, how could they leverage off of this so that it just doesn't become something that after a few weeks it gets swept under the carpet like it never happened, and it just becomes part of history and the soul? Because those souls that have been lost should never be in vain. It should be a propeller into the seed that we've now sown into the ground to begin watering the plant of a better Nigeria. So what, in your own opinions, do you think are the sort of steps, advantages, and what do you also think, there's now 3 questions, could be what could obstruct us from attaining those?
Okay. First of all, the motives and the Salino, the people who rule on the local government level, and the the elites should be more interested in what these people are promising. You know, the level of governance to that level is still our responsibility. If you look at, a typical example is how this country is run. The boroughs actually do a lot of, they're the ones who keep the libraries open. They're the ones who clear the rubbish. Under them, the school, even though they're within the ambit of the Ministry of Education, but the running of the schools and all other public facilities still fall within the boroughs. So we should be thinking about extending the government to the local government level, and not just let it get stuck in the executive. And in the same parallel, we should encourage skills acquisition. And just basically open opportunities. We're not talking about free education now. We're talking about the ability for people to develop vocational skills. You know, exactly.
Enable them thrive in their own community or their own environment.
Yes, yeah. You know, on the other side too, with the struggle with the kids, with the youth, they definitely need to be more organized. They definitely need to have a spokesperson at this stage. They should get more structured and be prepared. One of the offshoots of what has happened recently is the fact that they've actually formed the Youth Democratic Party.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, they're on Telegram.
Okay.
Yeah, they're on Telegram. I got invited to the Telegram. So, I'm interested in what goes on there. So the things we mentioned here, I'd like to see, if I have the opportunity to interact with them, to see similar things being echoed and well defined as goals that are attainable, or having a plan of action. Obviously, what they've done to date, I commend them, and hopefully it won't just be a dropping thing here. But one of the things they need to be worried of is that not many people speak their language. The people with whom they are in conflict with at the moment don't understand them. And in that loss of understanding and the hype Williams of it, a lot of miscommunication is being done, is happening, and a lot of people are getting wrong perceptions and wrong miscommunication broadly. They need to be skilled at that to ensure minimal miscommunication. At least at the heart of their message should be the fact that it is their desire to keep Nigeria one. Nigeria must work for Nigerians.
Totally agree on that.
They would have a far-reaching message, and they have examples, and they build more bridges. And we are a bridge generation. We went to federal schools, federal universities in Nigeria. So we have friends who are Igbo, we have friends who are Hausa. So we need to leverage that. And what could also encourage that, if you go back into our history, Africa is a mosaic of people of our color.
Yeah.
We have people who are like your complexion, slightly darker than you. The people
All
who are darker
shades.
than me.
All shades of
Yeah,
grey.
yeah. So the same, if you look at it, so Nigeria is a microsome of Africa. We would have a kaleidoscope or a shade of tribes and colors. We all have to recognize each other and welcome each other. Obstacles. Then we keep it focused on obstacles. Yeah, avoid miscommunication. Let the message be clear. Understand that the people you're working with, they don't understand you. And be encouraged by what was accomplished in Chile. Do you see what happened in Chile? Do you know what happened in Chile, Tony?
Yeah, I think I heard about it, but I'm trying to see if I can.
It's a landmark thing. Look, in Chile, there used to be a guy, just like our Abacha and the military guys. There was an era in the Chile's history where the military dictatorship was prominent and they ruled. The hallmark of that dictatorship was started by a military revolution by a guy called Augusto Pinochet.
Okay.
And he was more or less a dictator, and he ruled the country for a long time. Anyway, they entrenched the military, entrenched the oligarchs, they entrenched everything, mortgaged all Peru's resources and everything. But just slightly over a year ago, the young in Chile said enough is enough. It started from one of these agitations. We just can't work with you guys. We can't understand what's going on. And right now, they fought and have agreed to what's the word? Basically, they've dismissed the old constitution that they had, because that constitution was the heart of their problems. Because the constitution was birthed by military guys.
Which is the same issues we're facing in Nigeria.
That's why I refer to Chile. So at the moment, they've got to the stage that they've won victory. That the central governing body, they've got everybody accountable to resign and got everybody on their side. They lost roughly about 150 people in the last 1 year, but they persisted. So now the old constitution has been stepped down. It's a huge journey. They are now prepared to rewrite the constitution. That is more hard work than tearing down the old one. And it would involve, and their intention is to bring governance to the people, because in the past framework, all the copper, all the natural resources of Chile are being extracted and being funneled to the countries of the West, enriching people in the West, but the people, natives, are poor. So with that happening in Chile, the young should not be deterred. They should look up to the up and be prepared. It's a long haul. It's a long haul. It's a marathon series of battles. But they need media specialists. They need law specialists. They need constitutional law specialists. They need internet technology. They need all kinds of warriors. Yeah, and they need to keep the momentum going and draw the attention of the world on them in the right light. I'm not advocating violence, and I'm not advocating for them to physically go and protest. But there must be a way they could communicate their message, their intentions, with the tools and the mechanisms out there, and they keep the momentum going. The fate favors the young. We old will die off. So no matter what the resistance is, it's not unique to Nigeria, but it's definitely going to happen. Or we raise the bar for what it means to be a Nigerian, for the benefits of Nigerians. Nigeria must work for Nigerians. That's my set. Yeah, I don't advocate them to invoke the anger of the authorities, because based on what has happened, they will be come down heavy upon. And I don't advocate loss of blood, but the channel for dialogue, for communication, for expressing ourselves should be left open for them. And in that regard, I support them. In no time, they would win over people in government, and it's inevitable. And let them not also get lost with the fact that, oh, we don't need the older generation or the generation that failed us. That is not really nice. We didn't fail them. Nigeria, ironically, Nigeria has always been ruled by young people.
Yeah. I keep on saying that. The current leaders got there at 30s, 40s.
Yeah, it's just Obasanjo and Buhari. They have been the aberration to the succession of youthful leaders that we've had in our country. So because of that, we should not be misled. And it's not so. And it's just a phase in our existence, part of the experience, as I said. So they should continue with it, and we will encourage them with everything we have. Not because I'm inciting them to disorder, but I feel that if they don't go for it, nobody hands over power to anyone.
The kingdom of God suffereth violence. Violence takes it by force.
Well, that's true. But anywhere in history, it's the same thing. Once you go through the rigor of growth, and then when you feel that you're up to the responsibility, you put yourself forward. And that's how progress has been made all over the world. So the youth should please not get discouraged.
Excellent.
The government should be prepared. They should reposition government. The era of the Buhari and Obasanjo is gone. Even our own era, we are on our way out. Be that we're in our 50s. We have to protect ourselves.
Yeah, it's true.
So
youth is on that 60, Shabo. Go ahead. 50 is the new 40.
Yeah.
I said that already this afternoon.
Yeah. So all over the world, the youth are taking over. There's a clip by Harrison Ford that he gave us, where it was. Yeah. It's the truth. And there's nothing that will stop it in Africa, because the African youth, I can see what their peers are doing in other parts of the world. And they will not. So the government should be prepared. So who is going to help bridge that gap? You need skilled media practitioners and people who are good with public relations and negotiation and conflict management, as I said, not just barrel of the gun.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, it's been fireworks all night, Baba, and I really, really, really want to thank you for sort of sharing the last 2, let's just say 3 hours on this situation. In fact, as they say, the internet doesn't lie, so this is going to be archived somewhere in the internet, and we hopefully will be able to revisit it one day, and say, look, these are all the things we drew and we spoke about, and they have now manifest in the right order and form. And we hopefully should be proud Nigerians at that point when we look back. Nigeria.
Oh, definitely.
Home, whatever we could do to, input the little we could, the knowledge we gain from abroad, we bring it back home, and whatever we could do.
Yeah. It's iron sharpens iron.
And there you go, iron sharpens iron. So, with all this knowledge that you have, tell people, if people want to sort of find you or know more about what you do, or so, just 1 or 2 minutes, or your handles, social media handles, whatever you want to put out there. You want to just say your last words, prayer, open platform. Okay. Communicate so that we can understand you now, so that we won't be giving the wrong 5 for 5. Okay. Well, basically, I'm in the last 2 decades I've been working in IT. I have a background in estate management. I'm more of a humanist kind of person. I've seen this technology grow, evolve, and to see many dimensions. I'm interested in how we can grow and evolve as a people together and make things work for us as a people. Broadly, I'm a Pan-Africanist. I don't see Nigerians' problems in isolation that much.
We've done more than a dissertation on Nigerian affairs since 1987 that you and I met in secondary school. But I've come to see it as in context of Africa and what it means to be a black man in the world of today. So everything that would empower the next generation and help them keep their heads up, I'm interested in. But I'm not a political person. But obviously, thoughts, ideas, approaches to things, and then in my own area of specialization, I try to the things that I'm working on now. I'm really passionate to say that I wanted to embody the kind of companies, the companies that we want to run now, the companies that are servicing people in Africa. They're providing opportunities. There's a value add somewhere. We're making a meaningful impact. So in view of today's technologies and the resources we have, it's just igniting our minds that is left. And I'm so sure that my people are wizards in multiple disciplines, in multiple areas, is to get that spark moving. So that's where I am, bringing ideas to reality, thoughts, ideas, researching, building briefs, and developing opportunities and harnessing them. That's my call.
Excellent. So you're a people empowerer. You empower people. You're
so much, but
in another way, you're a manifestor. You make dreams come true.
I want to think that, but it's been an hard work stuff. You know how hard it is in this world of today. Everybody's trying their own bits, but I think the world that is emerging in the web as it is online, Africa's presence needs to be more defined, and we should not wait for people to define it for us. So that's where I am. Britain and Germany and the Europe developers have their own, but for years they've been defining us. We need to define ourselves. So there are many avenues, platforms where we could do this. So we just need to also reawaken our mind and remind ourselves that we can only succeed as a unit, not as not that I'm not that I'm the first lawyer in my local government, because that's what we used to celebrate before. The first doctor, all those shit is not inheritable, right?
Because you're the first, and you'll probably be the last.
Yeah. But industries, assets, value, wealth, prosperity is inheritable. Absolutely. So we need to help educate our people that let's focus on the inheritable stuff, not on the uninheritable PDP, APC, Inumbu, Tollgate.
And even those, they've come to their last leg now, obviously, with the new generation of things that are happening now.
So for sure. So that's where I am. Well, but I'm completely. I don't play politics. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a Labour. I'm not APC or PDP, and I don't believe in Republicans or Democrats. I see solutions out. My major philosophy is that it's only the factory man, the technologist that solves problems. The electricity we are enjoying today, Michael Faraday was not a politician. So when we think about that, let us not look towards the politicians for solutions, but set the structure in which these people who claim to represent us should be operating. And adjust accordingly based on results we are getting, and keep them accountable. And while they open the doors, they enable the rules, they put the things in legislature so that people can run off with their own things and do interesting stuff. That's how the world. That's what birthed the web today. If it was because of dictatorship, the internet will exist.
It was almost suppressed when it was about to come out. So.
Exactly. But then and again, look at what the benefit is doing for us. Yeah. So I'd like to do this again.
Absolutely.
Another topic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's nothing left more to say than a massive thank you, guys. Like, this is a wealth of wisdom that Wale has shared here from different. So listen, this has been 3 hours, and it hasn't just been. It's gone from the beginning, and it's sort of like nicely ended at the point that we. I mean, we had a questionnaire even drawn out, but we couldn't even. We didn't go through all the questions.
The question,
because the wealth of knowledge and how things just emanate from one thing in the context of discussing Nigeria is just not under something that we could do under the amount of time that we specified.
No. I think we should do things about how we could make people aware of opportunities in Nigeria.
Okay.
But I think we should do things about how skills, things that are relevant today.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that going to study a professional accountancy is a bloody waste of time.
At this point, yeah.
There's
QuickBooks. There's all sorts. I use QuickBooks. There's Xero. There's QuickBooks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But
your bank even gives you an accountant for free now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what are the next professions of the future? Why aren't our schools broadening our academic curricula? Why do we have many young people that claim to be educated but are useless to nobody because they're not skilled in the relevant skills of today? These things should be part of discussions of people who want to go and represent us. If they're going there to just go and share the salary and not discussing, you understand? There's so much that we could do, but we got to keep all these conversations going to keep the community of people and like minds who are really ready to try things and work with other people.
Okay.
It's
Go ahead. Finish. Yeah, finish up.
Yeah. No, I was just about to say, the things we can use this media to do. From my own side, too, let me just quickly thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to allow me to express myself. It's been a mutual thing, and as I said, just as you appreciate my insight, I would call it.
Yeah.
I really appreciate and value your own side of the insight, whereby that fuels the questioning and what you're trying to get at and the exchange. So I've learned from how these things are working, and if I'm probably here next time, I'll be more prepared.
Most welcome.
And
you're my pilot guest, and you can be pilot for a very long time. Do you understand? You have to piloting the chats with me every time because there's a well of knowledge inside of you, and I'd always like to dig in there and just pull it out. I mean, the only thing that we never lose is the knowledge we gain. You can forget it, but it doesn't mean you've lost it.
No knowledge is lost. That's true.
So thank you so much. I'll be calling you after again, but I don't even know if I should call you straight away because the conversation might continue.
Yes, definitely. But let's give you a break and then we can catch up any other time.
100%.
But I'd like to keep this going and we could do it and get it slick because look at Nick Cannon, look at Breakfast Show, Angela Yee, and all of them. This Angela Yee, I used to listen to Lip Service myself years ago. Now he's now with them, Charlemagne the God, and all of them. Guy Kunan guy, what's his name? The guy that there's so many of them. Podcasting is actually the way.
It is.
It's a good medium, and you can get the recognition.
Underestimated podcasting, they say, really the next Facebook and YouTube. It's a very underestimated.
It is. So that's why I'm interested. There's so many things. I see how this could be helped to drive so many businesses. So we could do this from time to time and keep the track going. So I'm happy to do this with you. Yeah.
So, boss.
Yeah, man.
Salute.
Nice one.
This guy,
salute you.
I've known him for the best part of 3 decades. Let's just keep it like that. We won't say our ages.
But nice one still.
Right,
cheers, man.
Thanks.
And you too. Cheers, man. Nice one. Yeah, right.
So, guys, There you go. Thank you so much for joining in. I know it's been, even me, I like, wow, this is knowledge, you know, and but hopefully none of it goes to waste. Hopefully people could listen to this and, you know, pull out of it, because by no means could you just take on board everything that he's spoken about and I've spoken about, but they're extracts that you could take from it that you could use in your own way. And hopefully it could be beneficial to you, and hopefully it could be beneficial to us as improving as a people, and then helping those around us improve as people, and ultimately improve as a community, and begin to improve ourselves as a nation as whole. We're all stakeholders in the entity called Nigeria. We do want to see the best come out of it. So whatever we can do, whatever you could do to begin to drive that process of change, let's all begin to take those steps forward. As I said, it's been exactly 3 hours. I started at 7 o'clock. I want to thank you, whatever point you joined in the conversation, and hope that you have a great weekend ahead until we hopefully speak again next time. Thanks. Yeah. Peace. Good night. God bless. I can never do the signs right, but thanks. Thank you.